God's timing is perfect. And you can see this when you study the story of Esther. Let's just start out with when Esther walks into the throne room. It had to be perfect timing, because if the king was grumpy or cranky, he could have executed her or banished her. But she walked in at the perfect time, and he held out his golden scepter. And then he said, I'll give you whatever you want, even up to half of the kingdom. But God's timing is so perfect, there was something inside Esther that said, wait, don't ask for him to save your people now. Ask him to dinner. So she asked him to dinner and put off the request. Dinner went amazing, and Haman was there, and the king was there, and they were all eating together. And after dinner, the king said, Esther, what do you want? I'll give you up to half of my kingdom. But God's timing is perfect. And God held Esther back, and she said, I want you to come to dinner again. Now, her life and the existence of her nation was on the line, yet Esther had so much faith in God, she was able to play it cool and invite him to dinner one more time. Well, God's timing is perfect because there must have been something in what the king ate that night, because that night he could not sleep. And perfect timing again, he called one of his guys and said, hey, read me some stories about myself. And so they flipped through the book, and perfect timing, they just open randomly to the page where Mordecai uncovers a plot to save the king. And the king says, now what did we ever do for Mordecai? Perfect timing. The servant said, we didn't do anything for him. Perfect timing again. Haman is in the waiting room trying to come in and see the king to ask for permission to kill Mordecai. Well, the king says, is anyone out in the lobby? And they say, well, Haman's out there, so bring him in. So Haman comes in, and the king says, what would you do to the person that the king wants to honor? And Haman is so arrogant, he thinks of himself. And so he comes up with some crazy, amazing plan. And the king says, great, do that for Mordecai. Perfect timing to rescue Mordecai's life. Well, later that day, Esther has the party, and she feasts Haman and the king, and at the end, the king is super, super happy, and he is willing to do whatever for Esther. And he says, what do you want? And she says, save the life of my people. And the king realizes that this plot that he didn't really understand was going to kill his queen, was going to kill the man who had rescued his life, was going to knock out an entire nation inside his realm. And when she pointed to Haman and said, this is the man who wants to do it, the king was furious, so he storms out. And Haman begins to beg for his life, and in his panic, he's clawing at the queen and almost crawling on top of her on her couch. And perfect timing, the king walks in and sees what's going on, and it is over for Haman. Well, there's not much time before the day when all of the Jews are to be killed by their enemies, but there's enough time for Mordecai to be put in Haman's spot, for them to write a new law, and for it to make it to every corner of the vast Persian Empire. God's timing is perfect. And if you look at the story of Esther, you see how tons of things didn't go the way they wanted it to. Esther was raised by her uncle or cousin Mordecai because her family passed away. She had to leave his house and go to a harem. Their whole nation was threatened to be killed. Mordecai was hated by Haman, and his life was even threatened. But every single time, God comes through in the perfect time to rescue. He's never early, but he's never late. God's timing is perfect, and man, that's something that I need to remember as I go through my days. Now, I don't struggle with anything quite as epic or dangerous as what Mordecai and Esther struggled with, but I have my stresses and my fears, and I want God to do things in my life, and he's either not doing it fast enough, or he's holding back, or I just want him to do things on my timetable. But the story of Esther encourages me that God's timing is perfect. So no matter what you're facing today, or what you want God to do or to not do, or to hold off or to speed up, remember that God loves you just as much as he loved Mordecai and Esther. and that his timing is perfect. You can trust in him because, hey, God's got this.